Well, good morning, everybody. How we doing? Merry Christmas. Oh, that was good. We're working on that. It's okay to say Merry Christmas here. We're so glad that you are here. My name is Chris Pleckenbaugh. I'm the lead pastor here at Wells Branch Community Church. And if you're like brand new or just joining us, man, I'm so glad you're here. We're in the Christmas season, so we're doing an Advent series. And if you didn't know, Advent means just the coming of someone really, really important. And coming of Jesus is super important. We're talking about his first coming. And what's so special about the first coming was the incarnation. If you're not Catholic, you may not know what incarnation means, but it's the indwelling in flesh. Carne is like Latin for flesh or meat or whatever. Anyway, so it's God who is transcendent, bigger than the whole universe, created it all in the palm of his hand, created everything is bigger than all that, transcendent, beyond space and time, comes in a moment to indwell a person and is born of the Virgin. And we make a big deal about it because either it's a really great fairy tale, but if it's true, it's like the greatest, coolest thing that has ever happened in the entire world. And we get really, really fired up and excited about it because God became a baby. Now, babies in general, they bring a whole lot of change and they bring a whole lot of tension and a whole lot of issues for our families. Anybody else experienced that of late? Anybody? Okay, good. So you know that babies just don't like have a baby like, oh, we had a baby. And it's just like you got like, a new accessory for something that you wear. This is like a baby is like a life-altering event. And, well, specifically like this. Whenever we had Austin, our firstborn, we had a dog at the time, Roxy. And then Roxy did not like that this newborn baby was taking her place. In fact, Adrian would be nursing, and she would literally try to wedge herself in between the baby and Adrian. It was interesting. And then eventually enough times of that, and we rehomed her to our next door neighbors, the Saucedos, and we have visitation rights twice a month, every other weekend. And so that went well, right? So then Austin was like the dominant one of the house. He, was able to oust the Roxy. But then our second-born Jet came on. And I'll never forget, Austin was 20 months when Jet was born. And so Adrian's parents came over and they stayed the night while I stayed with Adrian at the hospital and we gave birth and all that. And then I came home to spend some time with Austin while, Adrian was doing baby things. And so that it would be like, we could go and we're supposed to go all see the baby together. Like that's how you make it the least traumatic event. So we go to Mount Playmore, we go down slides, we're having a great time. And then we get to the hospital, we're going to go see baby. And he understood baby. He could be like, baby, we're going to go see the baby. And so we walk down the hall, and what you're supposed to do to make it less traumatic is like everyone go, you get mom and Austin, and we go look at the baby inside some other thing as if like it wasn't part of Adrian. And but we walk in, and there Adrian is nursing Jet. And then what happened was traumatic, and it was true. It's like, oh, that's traumatic. And you could just see his face go. And then he starts like crying, and then turns around, walks down, I don't know where he's going. He starts going down the hall. And like, he's out. I'm done. Yeah, you can have that. You have cheated on me. Like, it was the ultimate betrayal. Like, that was my spot. And we had a hard time of dealing with it. So his way of dealing with it was like, just not acknowledge that Jet exists. He is not here. We're keeping it moving. Well, then we had our third child, Titus, and we did all the right things with Jet, like Jet and Austin. We all went to look at the baby. We learned their lesson the first time. Well, then we brought the baby home, and Jet was like, he said, we can take the baby back to the hospital now. He was like 2 and change. And that wasn't happening, right? And so Jet gave a nice, sweet, like he kind of kissed the baby, and then I noticed that his mouth would get wider on the baby's head, and then the baby started screaming, and then there were like, and then as I pulled Jet away, his mouth was clung to the skull of the baby. He was not going to let go. It was war, and this was going to be his territory, and we're going to get rid of this thing because it's in my spot. Babies can be an issue, and especially when it comes to Christmas, when the baby is God in a manger, we can have a couple reactions to it. We can kind of have like, listen, we got to get through this thing. Our culture expects us to suck it up and shut up and get along with people for about a month, and we're going to do it. Come hell or high water, we're doing it. And you can be like, you can put the fake smile on and you're like, and then like, when the in-laws drone on about whatever things you're not doing right, you make it through that. But there comes a point where you're like, Jesus doesn't just come as a baby that you have to endure. He is a baby that grows up to be a king. And we can be resistant. We like bearded baby Jesus that we pray to. He stays in this nice little manger and he doesn't ask much of us. But then and you can ignore him. Like he just, sometimes he cries and you just got to pacify him with a pacifier, some money or something. Maybe we'll shut him up a little bit. But for the most part, you can shut him up. But when baby bearded Jesus grows up to be a king, that's an issue. And then he wants to step into our world, and there's like a resistance. I don't know if it finds us necessarily biting to a skull, but what it does find is us an adequate resistance where we want Jesus to back off our territory. And so this morning, I want us to find the proper reaction to Christmas, okay? That's where we're going this morning. We're going to be in the book of Matthew. We're going to be in the book of Matthew. If you don't have a Bible, raise your hand in the air, wave like you do care, and a Bible will come to you. If you don't have a Bible at all, this is our gift to you. If you are like, I'll borrow yours, thank you very much, and then you just put it on the chair when you're done, that'd be great too. We're about to be in Matthew 2, and if you're not like a Bible reader person, I'm going to, this might be really boring, and you're like, I don't care, but if you're like Bible nerd, do I have Bible nerds who at least like recognize themselves as Bible nerds? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ed. This is for Ed. So Ed, here's what this is about here. We're about to go into something called, whenever Matthew writes, he uses a structure, and it's called a chiasm, which is, you're like, what do you mean? Well, watch. For example, Matthew 2, 1 through 2 is like, the Gentiles come to worship the king. Matthew 2, 3 through 8 is Israel's rejection. King Herod and the scribes, the chief priests, are all like, whatever. And they tell Jesus to take a hike, and then the Gentiles worship the king. So there's a chiastic structure which is pointing toward the fact that Israel is rejecting the king. And the whole book of Matthew is about this rejection. So this is called a chiastic structure. Anyone know where chi? What's chi? Anyone know what chi is? Fraternity people, come on, help me out. What's chi? Come on, it's a letter. A beer, that was funny. All right, X. It's a letter X, right? And so what it is, it's like the top, it looks like the bottom, and it points to something in the middle. And so you can look at it as an X, but what I like to use it as is a hamburger, all right? You got two buns, and the meat of it is what everyone's trying to see. And the whole book of Matthew is trying to help you see that Israel rejected its king. And I'll explain more about that in a second. But all throughout the book of Matthew, they have this chiastic structure that just kind of repeats itself over and over and over again. Or you can call it the hamburger structure. Either way, that works too. All right, watch this. Here we go. Matthew 2, verse 1. We're going to get to this first part of the chiasm. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea. Now, Bethlehem, real quick. We know Bethlehem because of Jesus. But nobody else cared. Bethlehem is to the Jews of that time like Ogdenville, Kentucky is to Americans today. Everybody know Ogdenville, Kentucky? Nobody. Birthplace of Abraham Lincoln. All right, kind of important guy. You know Abraham Lincoln. You don't know where he's born, nor do you care. But that's kind of how it was with the people with David. They're like, okay, yeah, David. Oh, Bethlehem, that's where he's born. All right, interesting fact. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king. Herod the king's important because remember, he's the one that is currently reigning, and there's going to be a significant statement that's going to happen here in the next sentence. So in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? Now, this is why this is a problem. And we're going to get into it more when we talk about Herod. If you're a reigning king who got there through manipulation, murder, intrigue, political savvy, and work in the system, and then there's somebody who's been born king shows up, what is the proper response for the made myself king guy? If he would abdicate the throne, go over to little baby Jesus, be like, you know what, I'm your subject. I'll make sure things are running until you're ready to take over, but I am here to worship you as well, right? Like everyone, he would be on board with, technically, of giving the kingdom over. But nobody in their right mind ever does that because they're not God-minded like that. All right. So there's this statement of these guys that are not Jews come from far away and say, where's this one who's been born King of the Jews? Now, this phrase, King of the Jews, is seen one other place in the book of Matthew. You guys know where that is? It's in the second to last chapter of Matthew, chapter 27, and it's when Pilate nails to the top of Jesus' cross, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. So both times in the book of Matthew, Gentile people are the ones declaring that Jesus is the King of the Jews. And Matthew is writing to a Jewish audience to convince them that Jesus is the Christ. Okay, so that's just for free on that part, and I'm going to get to why that's important here. Wise men. All right, wise men from the east. They're known as magi. All right, I'm just going to give you, this is like not a trick question, so the first word that comes to your head when I say magi. Ready? Go. Magic. Good. Magician. That's it. Magician. Magi sounds like magic. The only reason a king would come to your mind is because you know the song, We Three Kings from Afar. All right, that is not biblically based whatsoever. All right, so like erase that song. Don't ever sing it at Christmas. Okay. All right, so here it is. Magi, magicians. Now, do Christians in general look favorably, Jews as well, look favorably or unfavorably upon magicians? That's weird. That's like sorcery. That's divination. That's bad. Okay, Matthew is writing a book to Jewish people to convince them that Jesus is King of the Jews. Now, if you were doing that and you were making it up because, you know, of course, this is a made-up book that we can't really trust. It's just a mess. If you were making it up, would you write in there that the very first people to know that the king was here were magicians and sorcerers? Would that like be your thing? No, you would not do that. It doesn't matter that they were kind of sciencey people. Sure, there was some astrology in there, but they were really great with astronomy. And so these scientists came 700 miles to get to Jerusalem because they thought that everyone could see this massive star in the sky. And they're like, well, we're here. Where's the one who's been born King of the Jews? We're here to offer up our worship and our gifts. We are here to do our due diligence because we follow the stars. And they say this, for we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. Now, this is what's so cool about this. Because, I mean, we got, like, if you're not a Christian here and you're like, come on, Chris. All right, a star in the sky. Oh, it's so sweet. Like little magi come from miles away to come and worship him. I'm sure there were shepherds and stuff and all this stuff. And you're like, look at that nativity scene. I mean, that's a great story. Let's leave it for what it is. It's just a story. Well, here's the problem. Matthew won't let you just think it's just a story. Matthew is trying to convince you that this really happened. But why would he use sorcerers and why would he talk about a wandering star in the sky unless it really happened that way? And I was kind of researching this past week, like, where are some like skeptic people that might give some credence to the star thing? Because here's the thing about evidence, right? You can't prove Jesus. Did you guys know that? You can't prove him. You can give evidence to Jesus. You can't prove anything. The only thing you can prove are the stuff in your science class. The only thing you can prove are stuff that are observable and repeatable. That's it. That's the only thing you can prove. Everything else gives you evidence. In fact, videotape. Like whenever you talk about film, like, you know, someone does a crime, you catch them on film. That's not proof. That's just evidence because someone could have doctored that film. Like nothing is proof unless it's observable and repeatable. Now, here's what's so cool about the stars. You can rewind stars back to see, was he just making it up or did something happen? And I want to show a quick video that would really kind of help us process from a skeptical point of view. So it's true. So this is reality. In fact, when I saw that, the one theory that I go with is that there you saw where we talked about Venus and Jupiter. They came really close around 2 BC, and that's the one I kind of stick with because when that happened, Jupiter is known as the king planet, came really close to the Regula, which is the king star, and Venus is the mother. All right, and they were crossing the constellation of the Virgin, and also within the constellation of Leo, which is the lion, which is the tribe of Judah. And so that would have helped because Judea is where they were. They were looking for a virgin. They were looking the king. I mean, how awesome is that all that stuff is in the night sky. Now, remember, it doesn't prove anything, but it gives evidence for that they saw something. And why would you have a story about magicians or sorcerers or people that you would typically discredit as being the very first ones to give credence to your king? Okay, that's where we're going with that. So whenever Herod hears this, he kind of freaks out. He was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Because when you're the king, and it's taken a lot of work to become king, and oh, by the way, you don't mind murdering your wife and children to make sure that you stay in power. Like, this is that kind of maniacal megalomaniac who is evil genius type guy. And he assembles all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, and he inquired, Herod inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And they told him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Now, everyone gets together, and everyone has a sort of anxiety. In fact, that word troubled means anxiety. There's an anxiety that comes when someone else declares that there's a new king. And so Herod, you can probably figure out why he's anxious. But the scribes and Pharisees, they should an anxiety, or it troubles them as well. But what's strange is their response to the being troubled is they do nothing. They act as a human Google. They'll figure out, something you could easily Google. Where's the Christ to be born? Oh, Bethlehem. They go and answer that question, but you don't find them doing anything else in the story of Jesus and the Magi. They're just absent. And I kept trying to, why? How's it possible that these guys responded in apathy when they were troubled? Because that's what happened. The troubled scribes responded to Christmas with apathy. And I went back and I started reading Micah 5 because it gets pretty clear about who it is that God was revealing himself as. Look, watch this. Micah 5, chapter 2. Look at this. Or Micah chapter 5, verse 2. But you, O Bethlehem, Ephrathah is like an older name for the town of Bethlehem, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me, who is one who is to be ruler in Israel, so a king, whose coming forth is from old, from ancient days. What does that mean, ancient days? Every time that's mentioned, it's always referencing God being an eternal God, from eternity past. And he shall stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. And they shall dwell secure. For now he shall be great to the ends of the earth, and he shall be their peace. Now, you're like, okay, Chris, listen. There's a lot of people claiming a lot of stuff. God hadn't spoken for 400 years. Why should they have been any more animated, excited about anything than what's going on here? A lot of people were claiming all sorts of stuff. Well, here's something that also happened during this time that they would have known about. 3 years before this, and this is in the book of Luke, an angel came and visited a priest named Zechariah as he went in for his division, as it was his turn to offer incense and prayers before the people. Okay, so his job was to go before the people. He's the one guy allowed in the Holy of Holies, and he gets a word from God. Now, God had been silent for 400 years, so this was sort of a big deal. In all the little Jewish conferences, they would have talked about this. You guys have business conferences that nobody else knows about but you and your own company and that kind of thing? Same kind of deal. Normal people wouldn't have known about this, but all the priests and all the scribes, they were in tune. They would be like, have you heard about what happened with Zechariah the priest, the 90-year-old guy? He got his wife, and she ain't no spring chicken. She is old, and she's pregnant, And she had a kid. So this priest, who's really old, has a vision, and it's 3 years before the Magi show up. I mean, I understand having like short-term memory loss, but this is out of control. And so these guys, they have the tension of it. They're like, oh my gosh, maybe this whole thing happened a couple years ago that Zechariah, the 90-year-old guy, got a word from the Lord that the forerunner to Messiah was coming, and his wife, who was, she didn't even look good. She seriously needs some Mary Kay. And like there was nothing going on with her, and she gave birth to a baby. Like, how did that happen? And they're sitting there freaking out about it. And then a couple years go by. And then here come the Magi. And my thought would be, hey, maybe that had something. Remember that 3 years ago thing with, Zechariah going mute, getting his wife getting pregnant, having a baby. Like, I think there might be something to it. But no, for some reason, they're just like, let's not even go there. You want to know why? When God's been silent for 400 years, you don't want to get your hopes up. Like, you've been disappointed before. If God is silent, if God hasn't talked to you, if you've been praying, if you've been seeking, eventually you sort of give up. And then you start to just deal with how bad things are. You're dealing with the crazy King Herod who kills off people that he doesn't like them, and you don't want to be one of the ones he kills off, because what's it going to do for you anyway? Because your passion, your zeal for the things of God have waned, and you're like, it's just too much trouble. It's just too exhausting. I don't want to fight the fight about telling somebody about Jesus again, because I don't want to be that guy. I'm tired of being that guy. And when the family gets together, just don't talk about politics and religion. Just keep it on, the safe topics of the weather and whatever sports team. You can debate that. Just keep it on the light stuff. And the scribes, the ones that should have been the most excited, the ones that studied this stuff, the ones that talked about this and were they'd read the Bible and when is this going to happen? Could it be in our lifetime? Could it be in our lifetime? They're like, nah, don't worry about it. And nobody goes to Bethlehem from the scribes and the chief priests. Nobody goes. The only thing I can sort of compare this to on getting apathy. So yesterday was the Army-Navy game. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that or care. Okay, yeah. So this was an exciting thing for me because Army hasn't done very well. All right, I'm a graduate of Army, and so during my tenure as a cadet, we won 3 out of 4. All right, and then there was a streak. I think it was up until from the existence of Facebook up until 2 years ago, for 14 years, Army didn't beat Navy. And listen, I kind of started to develop. Last year we won, and it was only because Navy's, their first quarterback got hurt, their second quarterback hurt. They were on their third guy. I think he probably was more of a punter than he was actually a quarterback, and we barely beat him, all right? So, it was oh, man. So what happened for me is I kind of grew apathetic towards the whole Army-Navy. In fact, Army's football season. People would come up to me and how'd Army do? I'm like, I don't know, don't care. And what I really did care, it's just I didn't want to hear about them losing because I'm a sore loser. If you play me in anything, I'm going to do my best to have if I lose, to kind of be gracious about it on the outside. On the inside, I'm thinking, I will kill him. That's kind of me. That's sort of where I go. And so, for me, in fact, yesterday, one of my buddies, he texted me, he's like, hey, where are you watching the Army-Navy game? I'm like, from my house. And no, you're not invited. Because if we lose, I need to mourn, all right? I need to have my own time. So I get it. That's how you become apathetic. And so and whenever the kids asked me to go run around outside, I would, because I didn't want to watch the part where we fell apart and lost the game. And I was but I could not watch. It was it's a train wreck where you just, you shouldn't watch that, but you just can't take your eyes off the thing. That's sort of how I felt about it. And all of a sudden, we actually did win yesterday, which is pretty exciting. Yeah. But the reality is, there's a part of me that didn't want to experience it because I've been so jaded by losing. And these scribes and these chief priests, after 400 years of silence, were I don't know, man. I don't want to get my hopes up again because a lot of people say a lot of stuff. And so I don't fully blame them. And I wonder if we've gotten that way with Christmas in general, just sort of apathetic. This Christmas is going to be like all the other Christmases. And Jesus isn't going to show up. And I'm tired. And let's just get this thing over with. And I wonder if that's what Jesus meant when he came into the world as a baby, to be to celebrate his birthday, something to just get through. But Herod had a different reaction. Verse 7. Then Herod, he hears all this. Now remember, evil genius type guy. He summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And then he goes, hey, and he sent them to Bethlehem saying, go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him. Which sounds really spiritual, but remember, evil genius, his troubled Herod responded to Christmas with resistance, because what we're going to find out like a couple verses later is that when the Magi don't send him word, he gets sort of angry. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious. And when he gets furious, he starts killing. And he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. Here's a guy who loses his mind and goes on a killing spree because his kingdom, his reign might be in question. Who is this guy born king of the Jews? He needs to go. And again, I don't want to compare myself to Herod, but there's a part of me that's like Herod. I don't want to give up control. When I was a company commander, I just come back from Iraq, and we spent a whole year with my company, and my company was transitioning, and I was leaving the Army, but I spent 10 more months as the commander of that unit. And I was preparing them to go back to Iraq, because if you're not in Iraq or Afghanistan, you're preparing to go back to Iraq or Afghanistan, or you just got back. So we got back, we did 2 months of nothing, and then we started training to go back. And I would take the guys, and we would just do room clearing exercises, kicking in doors. Kick the door again, harder, kick it. And the guy's like, sir, we've done it 100, do it 100 more. That's kind of how we did things. And so I just kind of put my heart and soul into these guys to train them to go back to combat. And I knew, and it was appropriate, and it was right. Nobody gets command for more than 2 years. My 2 years was up. It was time for me to let go of the reins. And so I knew the guy that was coming in, and I had a meeting. Like, we were all at the range, and the guy that was going to replace me came out to kind of just check on things. And then my lieutenants, who had been with me through thick and thin, we lost people together, loved together. All of a sudden, they start listening to him, and he starts, so here's what I want you guys to do, blah, blah, blah. I go, first of all, you, be quiet, and you can just go over there. Thank you very much. Now, here's the way this is going to work. You're not going to talk to him until he takes command. I'm the commander here. Like, when I look back, it's like one of the most embarrassing moments, like, of all time. It's just like, look, like, what was wrong with me? Why? Because I had such affection but there was this thing of control. There was this thing of, those are my guys. You don't talk to my guys. Without coming to talk to me first. I don't know. I don't know. It's like, so they may have been meeting behind my back, but at least they never met in front of me. All right, like, that's all I know. But there is that part of us when baby Jesus grows up, and he's no longer baby beater Jesus. He's grown up man Jesus, and he wants to be a king, and he's dies on the cross, raised from the dead, and he's reigning from on high. And then he has stuff to say about your marriage. He says stuff to the way you treat women. He has stuff to say the way you treat people. He has stuff to say about the way you manage your finances. He has stuff to say about, like, what's right, what's wrong, what the moral compass is, and like how to direct the affairs of your life. And here's where we push back. We're like, whoa, baby Jesus, you're in the manger. The problem is baby Jesus grows up, baby Jesus is now King Jesus, and King Jesus wants to be an actual king. And kings don't ask you for your opinion. They don't have a suggestion box. They're just a king. And so here's the thing, like, he doesn't need our help ruling the universe. He doesn't need any suggestions. And I know, like, he's old and so outdated, but remember, he is outside space and time. And so he knows everything about you as he is your ultimate designer. And I know this is the part where we push back, like, Chris, you don't understand. Like, I keep my religion separate from my other life. And he's like, there is no other life. It's all spiritual. Everything is. And Jesus wants to be king of your finance, and he wants to be king of your relationships, and he wants to be king of your family, and he wants to be king of everything. And that makes us angry. And that's, for some of you, you're at this church because the last one made you angry. Am I getting on toes now? And you'd say, well, you don't understand what happened at the last church. And then I'm going, was there sin in your life? And they didn't address it properly. And you're like, well, yeah. And or did someone make a sin and Jesus said for you to love people? And you're like, well, not them. They are unlovable. And you're talking about the bride of Christ, the church, who's unlovable. Anyway, we have a lot of issues there, right? We don't want to deal with church because when we deal with church, what happens is we're going to get like a whole bunch of like conviction and guilt and all that. I don't want to do it. Listen. I just want you to recognize that when Jesus is your king, he is king. He's king. I know that we have our own way of viewing our lifespan of 80, 90 years. We are going to do some awesome stuff, but he's been around a lot longer, and he's going to be around a lot longer than us ever will be. And he wants us to be king. So on Christmas, when it comes to Christmas, we translate that to, I'm going to treat people with love. I'm going to enjoy this season as a time of worship, and I'm going to enjoy my family. I'm going to love people who are unlovable, and I'm not going to say that thing that's really irritating that I know that can push a button, even when they push mine. I'm going to give up control. Control. Do you know what I mean by control? The commander's here. The new commander wants to take over. We got to take a step back and be like, let's listen to that guy because he is the king. And then we're going to look at the wise men. And then listening to the king, the wise men, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose, went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. I mean, here it is. You got to think about this. They've come 700 miles. They spent at least 2 to 6 months maybe traveling with a whole lot of loot, which means you got probably the security detachment. That's why when we think about the 3 wise men, there couldn't have been 3 wise. There's a whole bunch more people, armed guards, the whole security detachment, all that. They're all probably coming with them. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the, say it with me, everybody, house. Is this a stable? No. Look at your friend next to you and say, nativity is wrong. There are no magi in the stable, all right? That's shepherds at the stable. The magi's are at the house. Okay. And they saw the child. Is he a baby? No, he is a 2-year-old, and he's probably screaming with Mary, his mother, and Joseph went out for a walk to get away from it. Okay, and they fell down and worshiped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. Now, every time I've heard this story, somebody says, they'll say something like, gold is for the king, which shows that he is really, truly the one true king. I'm like, okay, yeah. And then like, frankincense is what you would burn in worship, and so is myrrh. You could burn it in worship or use it as embalming. Maybe that's symbolizing how one day Jesus is going to be buried. You know what I think it is? This is God providing a whole bunch of cash because they're about to head to Egypt for a couple years. And this is like, remember Bourne Identity, Jason Bourne? They don't have like drop boxes and stash points where like there's guns and cash and passports there. Like, this is like, if you're going to go run for a couple years, you need some money to do it. You with me? And notice how they don't tell, we're going to talk about this next week. They don't tell Joseph, or angels don't tell Joseph about having to dash to Egypt till they get the cash. Because that's just like, all right, my wife is a virgin who's going to be with child from an Holy Spirit, and an angel came and told her that at night. Sure, I'm going there. But then you're going to tell me to run to Egypt in the middle of the night with no money. No, it's provided. This was so cool about this. The gold, frankincense, and myrrh is merely provision for a couple years of being a fugitive. And everybody wanted to kill you. So if you ever want to know like witness protection programs before that, this was the original, all right? And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. See, wise men took the trouble to respond to Christmas with worship and joy. Now, I want to walk you through this. 700 miles with a whole lot of cash, a whole lot of stuff. They're coming 700 miles just to provide running money for Mary and Joseph and Jesus. Think about that. That God, in his infinite wisdom, can bring it all together, that when Herod, who's going to go on a murderous killing spree to try and find Jesus, is going to give Jesus an out, pay for it, and make sure he's taken care of by a just man and a holy woman who want to serve God. And then these wise men, they exit the story. This is like, you guys know anything about meal trains? Are you guys familiar with meal trains? All right. Here's how a meal train works, okay, just in case you guys didn't know this. So what happens, you're sick or you have a baby, okay? And what happens is you have a meal train. Now, meal trains are not for you, the person making the food, right? They're for the person you're giving the food to. So, meal train etiquette. You don't invite yourself in after you drop off the food. Like, do you guys feel like this is common knowledge? All right, I'm going to just share the story because the person's not here and it's really fun. Okay. So when we had Austin, right, like, yeah, we didn't sleep. We were exhausted. And there's like that point at which you're like, I'm a zombie. I don't even know. Where's food, right? And so we had a meal train. There were sign-ups. And somebody signed up. And like you can sign up for what you're bringing. And this person wrote Taco Bell. And I'm like, awesome. So the person comes up and the person knocks on the door and they go, where would you like it set up? And I'm like, well, that's a weird way to say that. It's Taco Bell, right? And so the person brings in the Taco Bell. They set it up on the kitchen table. They set it all out, the spread, and then they sit down. You guys got any extra hot sauce? Adrian, it's like showers and bathing and just like getting ready in general are just like a task too far. And so we're just like, oh, we're doing this. And so we all sit down and we have a hearty Taco Bell menu right there at the dinner table amidst screaming. Anyway, listen, what you do with a meal train is you show up, you drop off the treasure, and you roll out because you're giving. And that's what these wise men did. They didn't show up and be like, okay, Jesus, now can you do like one? Can I get one request? Do I get one? Like, I know you're two. I can pretty much get anything I want at this point. I would like a candy rainbow. You're going to, so here it is. Here it is. These magi before Jesus, they're there to give, and then they go 700 miles back home. Exit the story. Don't ever hear from them again. I'm just a little footnote in the story of Jesus. Thank you very much. And the reality is that's all we are. But they responded with not only joy, but it was great joy. And so this Christmas, I want us to respond in worship. Because there's this question of how are you going to respond? And a great way for us to be reminded of how we should respond is communion. Because did you know that Jesus did grow up? He did declare himself to be king, and then he died on the cross for our sins. And the night before he was betrayed, Jesus took bread, got with his disciples, he broke the bread, said, this is my body broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And then that same night, he took the cup. This is wine. This is grape juice. He said, this is the blood of the new covenant shed for you and for all people for the forgiveness of sins. Do this regularly in remembrance of me. And so what we do regularly is we take the body, symbolically, we take the chunk of bread, we dip it into this wine, or we take a shot of grape juice, and for a moment, we think about what Jesus did for us on that cross, that he came to save us, and then he rose from the dead to forever be with us and to be our king. And his rule doesn't start when we die. His rule starts right now. And so this morning, as you're contemplating Christmas and what it means, Christmas isn't complete without the cross. And Jesus came not for presents, but Jesus came and endured for the joy that was set before him. He endured the cross, despising the shame, and he went to that cross for you. The transcendent God, outside space and time, nothing in the world could contain him, entered into a baby boy who grew up to pay for your sin and my sin. And then he didn't stay dead, and he's still not dead. And those of us who are Christians believe him and know him. But if you're not a Christian here today, my heart, my hope is that today would be the very first day that maybe you step over that line of faith and you take communion for the first time. and you're like, you know what? I believe it. I believe that he died for me. I believe he was raised from the dead for me, and that I can have access to the King, who's my Father, because of what Jesus did for me. And if you're a Christian here today, before you take communion, I want you to take just a check. Have you become apathetic to the things of Jesus? Has there been this part of you that's gone resistant to the things of Jesus, and Christmas has become like a drudgery or a chore as opposed to a season of celebration and worship? Are you wanting Buddy Christ as opposed to a king? Is there a part of you that's still stuck in trying to make Jesus be your own personal God that you've created as opposed to the one that is? So that's where we're going to go this morning. As we sing, as we take communion, I want you to reflect, and I want you to pray, and I want you to seek God, and I want our response to Christmas to be worship. Would you pray with me? Father, you have done great things, and we worship you because of it. You have done the unthinkable. You have taken yourself, and you have changed the molecular makeup of you, who is beyond space and time, beyond molecules and all that, and entered into humanity. And I cannot wrap my head around that, how that's even possible, how you could write yourself into the story and live the life that none of us could live, that die the death that we all deserve, and then be raised from the dead. And God, I'm praying that this Christmas, that people here would come to acknowledge the Savior, that we wouldn't just simply put up Christmas music and say Merry Christmas that has no meaning behind it, that Christ would be prominent in everything that we say and do, especially when it comes around his birthday. God, we love you. And God, as we take communion, would you just help us to wrestle with our hearts for what it is to worship you? And God, I'm praying that somebody here who doesn't know you would make that step of faith, the Holy Spirit penetrate their heart. Would they just go, man, I don't even know why I feel this way, but I'm going to step over that line of faith that Jesus is my Savior. God, I love you. I worship you. I'm so excited about all you're about to do. In Jesus' name, amen.